And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12 p.m. or a couple of minutes past 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which means that it is about 3 minutes past 9 Pacific and it's past 5 GMT. And so today we have another fabulous presentation titled Veil-Evasion with the Veil Framework. And coming from us live and direct from Northern Virginia is Chris Truncer and Will Schroeder. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Hacker Hotshots.
Thanks for having us on.
Yep, good to be here.
Terrific. Okay, guys, without further ado, I'll just let you guys jump straight into the content. I'm sure a lot of viewers have you know, we're keeping this to 15-20 minutes. Obviously, we might go a little bit over. So, you know, without further ado, chaps, take it away. I'll confirm that the video is good, and off you go.
Looks good.
Perfect. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm Will. I go by the handle Harmjoy.
Sorry. One second, bringing it back up.
There you go.
So I'm Will. I go by the handle Harmjoy. This is Chris.
I'm Chris Truncer. Obviously, go by Chris Truncer.
But we both work at a group called the Adaptive Threat Division for a company called Varus Group LLC out of here in Northern Virginia. And this presentation is actually going to go over all the tools in the Veil framework, not just the Veil-Evasion component. So there's now 4 separate tools after release this past DEF CON. So we're going to try to go through all of them in about 15-20 minutes and hopefully answer some questions you guys have on them.
Yep. Here we go. So the Veil framework, one of the main things that we try to reach out and do. Oh, no, you hit it
Again, sorry. Technical difficulties.
Okay.
There we go.
One of the main things that we were trying to do is we were trying to bridge the gap between just typical pen testing tools and into with red teaming capabilities. We did this by trying to create 4 separate tools that are that we try to help do that with. Veil-Evasion is our flagship tool. This is what we originally released, and what has gained some popularity. It generates AV evading executables. We have Veil-Catapult, which was released at ShmooCon. This is our payload delivery tool that we actually use to move our payloads from our attacker machines to a machine that we're looking to go against. Veil-PowerView is our situational awareness tool that's written completely in PowerShell. And Veil-Pillage was just recently released at DEF CON about 2 weeks ago, roughly, something like that. And that's our fully fledged post-exploitation framework. So we'll go into Veil-Evasion a little bit. So this is the initial problem that we had when we are on pen test, because we go on pen test probably at least once, if not twice a month, would you say? And this is what almost every pen tester out there is going to run into. This is an example of a stock Meterpreter executable generated by the Metasploit framework and uploaded to VirusTotal. The thing to take away from this is antivirus is catching pen testers, while malware authors out there sometimes don't get caught. But as you can see, a significant majority of different antivirus solutions out there will catch you if you just try your stock Metasploit executables. So this is our problem, and we wanted to try to figure out a way to not have this be a problem anymore. Our initial solution is we came up with a couple different goals that we wanted to hit. The first goal was we want to be able to, as pen testers, get around antivirus as easily as professional malware authors are. It's not a problem for them. We want to have the same capabilities. We don't want to have to roll our own backdoor for every single assessment that we're going on. That's just going to be a significant amount of time that would have to be used, and an overhead when we would be doing that versus actually pen testing the network or the application or whatever it is that we're supposed to do. And finally, we wanted to find a way that we can actually execute any existing shellcode or stagers that we may have in an AV evading way.
So right after we released Veil-Evasion about 1.5 years ago,
yep.
It started getting some traction when we presented this past year at ShmooCon. These are our 2 favorite tweets after the presentation. So Chris Campbell of SecureSec, he's one of the PowerSploit authors and Script Junkie. He's written some cool tools. But, you know, the main thing that bothers them about the Veil framework is that new pen testers will never know how terrible this all was to do manually. And this is the kind of takeaway we wanted to give to everyone on this, is that we didn't invent these techniques, or most of these techniques. We drew from stuff that was out there, but we hated having to roll everything manually. You know, drop it onto a Windows VM and tweak stuff and try to hand obfuscate stuff. So we wanted a really nice kind of automated system.
Yep. So our initial approach when we actually started writing Veil-Evasion is we started aggregating as many different shellcode injection techniques across or via like a language agnostic approach, where we just wanted to find as many methods of doing it as possible that are publicly available. And all of the methods, is when we first released, and I believe still mostly still in the framework right now, are already publicly available. So the techniques that Veil-Evasion is using is not like an O-Day, for lack of a better term, or some brand new unreleased technique. It is already publicly known and documented. So we did that to find our first methods of evading AV. Then when we had that, we wanted to then focus on automation and usability when developing the framework, because in our opinion, if there's a tool out there that you need on a pen test and it's unreliable, it's not something that you can use every time, because we want our tools to be usable and like you can rely on it to work 100% of the time, or as close to it as possible. After that, we then started doing some research into how can we create some shell codeless stagers, and this is doing it in like a higher level language, such as writing a stager purely in Python versus in shellcode. And then we also looked into creating some auxiliary modules as well. So we created VDay, or we didn't create it, but this is our term that we're using. Basically, ever since September 15th, we've always released at least one new payload on the 15th every month. This is our goal, that we're always going to continue to do this. We have 30 currently different published...
33 now.
Or 33 published payload modules that are out there in the framework, and we have at least roughly 20 or so that are privately stored that are going through QA and that we're just testing to make sure it's still working in compatibility with our framework. And so the goal is we're going to be releasing for quite some time.
And we've got a cool one coming up this month. So.
Yep. So in a nutshell, that's Veil-Evasion and how we're trying to bypass AV and not have that be a problem anymore. So the next tool that was created, as I stated before, that was released at ShmooCon, was Veil-Catapult. And so our initial problem is we wanted to obviously bypass antivirus, so we created Veil-Evasion. So it's awesome. We now have this AV evading executable on our attacker machine. So the next thought was, okay, how do we actually move this from our attacker machine to the machine that we are looking to attack, and then execute that payload so that it's actually running and we can get our callback? And our answer was Veil-Catapult.
Yeah, this is our little graphic with the catapult with the little Metasploit payload, launching it at the Microsoft Security Essentials Castle, because
it's awesome.
MSC is still funny to us.
Yeah. So, like we said, we released this at ShmooCon in 2014. It has tight integration with Veil-Evasion for on-the-fly payload generation. So what we mean by that is when you actually start up, Catapult, you can easily create a Veil-Evasion payload if you don't already have one made, and Catapult will actually drop you directly into the Veil-Evasion menu. What Catapult then does is it can upload and execute your payload on the machine you're trying to attack, or it can host the payload on your local attacker machine by setting up an SMB share and then invoking the machine you're looking to attack to actually execute that.
And that does it over like the UNC path invocation, kind of reaching back.
Yep. So after that, we were then going from the approach, okay, we have our delivery method. Now, as pen testers, something that we always need are cleanup scripts, because we don't want to leave malicious artifacts from us on a client's network, application, anything like that. So Veil-Catapult actually also creates cleanup scripts that will kill your payload and will actually delete them from the machine that you've attacked. However, we have all this built into Catapult, and it's awesome, but it's now actually obsolete due to the release of Veil-Pillage, and we'll be going for that shortly.
I'll go over that in a little bit. So. Cool. So Veil-PowerView. This was the third tool released. It came out in, I think it was March.
Yeah, it's like that. Yep.
This is a Windows kind of network and domain situation awareness tool that's written completely in PowerShell. So it's compatible with version 2. It'll run on Windows 7. It'll run on Windows 8. It'll run on whatever Windows platform you can invoke it on, as long as it has PowerShell running and enabled. So again, pure PowerShell situational awareness tool. Its original motivation came about because the client had a protection where they banned all net commands on domain machines. So our normal kind of lateral spread and domain awareness, getting users, getting groups, seeing where these users are logged in, seeing the sites, components of the domains, trust, and all that. We couldn't do most of that stuff, so we were annoyed, but then went back and a couple days later had a pure PowerShell replacement using a lot of these PowerShell Active Directory hooks and stuff like that. Makes it really easy. So that was kind of its initial motivation. The second part of it was we've used Rob Fuller, Movix, his nephew.exe tool. We've used it on a lot of assessments, and it's in 20 seconds. It's a executable written in C that utilizes several Windows API commands to enumerate machines on the domain. It'll get like shares, logged in users, and all this type of stuff. So I wanted to port that functionality to PowerShell so we don't have to drop a binary to disk. And it's a lot, if you want to tweak stuff like add in a delay or a jitter, a new functionality, it makes it a lot easier to do it in PowerShell, and you don't have to recompile and redistribute each time. And from there, just kind of started to explore and expand some functionality. So some of the interesting functions, like I mentioned, the nephew thing, this is a full PowerShell replacement of nephew.exe. It has all the same functionality plus extra stuff. One that we use a lot is invoke share finder, and this will enumerate all machines in the domain, find all the shares in all those machines, and also optionally check if you have read access to all those shares. So you can run this, let it chew in the background, and you'll get a nice list popped out of every single share on the network that your user has access to, which, fun fact, in most organizations there are at least a few shares with sensitive data that aren't locked down properly.
Yep.
It's, I think, on almost every assessment I've been on
pretty much
in the last 3 months, we found something with this. There's also a port of the local admin searching on module from Metasploit. It's called invoke find local admin access. And again, these names look kind of wonky as trying to follow the standard PowerShell naming stuff, so that's why it looks a little weird. But this module will actually go out to the network and then find all machines that your current user has admin access to. If they're in a specific group or something, or they have privileges over a remote machine, this will actually tell you, pop out a nice list saying this is where you can ps exec to. Invoke find vuln systems queries Active Directory for machines that are likely vulnerable to 08, 067. So normally there's sometimes a few of these still laying around. So this makes it easy, and you don't have to use Nessus. The really cool stuff that I'm the most proud of is user hunting. So we do this on almost every single assessment I'm on, to where if you have, say, local admin hashes or something, one of your next goals is, let's find where high-value users are logged in. So PowerView has two methods to do this. Invoke User Hunter will kind of take some of the same functionality as nephew. It'll get all machines in the domain, then it'll go to each one and get the logged-in users in the sessions. Then it'll run a query for all the users in a domain group, like domain admins. And basically, long story short, it'll march through every single machine in the domain and then match it up against your target user list, and it'll say DAs are logged in here, 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 here. Or any other group you want, enterprise admins or workstation admins or something. The Stealth User Hunter uses a red team trick where it'll query AD for all the users, extract out all of the user.home directories from AD. And this is usually where most user profiles have their remote file share mounted. So it'll extract all the file shares from there and run net sessions against each. So if you only have 10 file servers or something like that, this will only do 10 calls. It's really fast. There's not a lot of traffic. It matches all those sessions up against the target user list. Long story short, you can get really good coverage for where a lot of users are logged in on the network with a lot less traffic and significantly quicker. Real quick, this is some new functionality that's been in PowerView. So domain trust, I'm not going to get super into exactly all how the domain trusts work, but in 20 seconds you can enforce this kind of specific relationship between multiple domains to where they can share information, or people that could have administrative access in one domain can have admin access in another domain. Also, if you have kind of a parent-child relationship, there's an implicit trust between those. They have to be linked. So PowerView now has a bunch of functions that you can enumerate all these trusts and domains. And also, most functions now accept a -domain flag. So if you know there's a trust, say between test.local and sub.test.local in this example, you can query all the users in that remote domain, you can get all the machines, you can do almost all of the PowerView functionality right across these domain trusts without having to remember syntax or doing that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So this has been really useful to us recently. Now this functionality is in. You can find a lot of cool stuff by kind of enumerating and exploiting domain trusts. Trying to go a little faster. Okay, Veil-Pillage, post-exploitation 2.0. This is the tool that was released at DEF CON. It's a pure post-exploitation framework written in Python with really tight integration with Veil-Evasion. It has multiple trigger options, kind of like Catapult did.
Yep.
You can use WIMS, PSExec, stuff like that. It's completely modular, unlike Catapult. So here, you can build a post-exploitation module, drop it into the tree, it'll load it up, and you can perform all these actions against the common target credential sets you have. And there's absolute complete logging and cleanup capabilities. Again, we don't want to leave our agents lying around with machines and everything like that. So any module that has a reciprocal cleanup action, it'll produce a cleanup script. This is that Catapult functionality that's been ported into Pillage. So now Catapult is just a couple modules kind of in the Pillage tree. You can do custom EXEs or drop right into Veil-Evasion, just like Christian mentioned. You can either upload and trigger the executables or post them with the UNC path. And one thing that Chris didn't mention is this. The interesting thing about this, and we demoed this in our ShmooCon talk, so if anyone is interested, the video's up online. But this can get some otherwise disk-detectable EXEs right by some antiviruses. So an EXE that would be detected if dropped on disk, if you host it and do the UNC trigger, it'll load it straight into memory without touching disk, and it can get right by some stuff. So powersploit. The powersploit project is awesome. It's extremely powerful. And if people that aren't aware of it, it's a PowerShell post-exploitation framework. It has stuff like invoking shellcode, keyloggers. You can invoke Mimikatz completely in PowerShell, which is awesome. The one problem with powersploit is that kind of the barrier to entry is a bit high. It can be a little bit difficult to use if you're not used to weaponizing it. So one thing I wanted to do with Pillage was lower that barrier to entry and make powersploit as easy as possible to run across multiple machines. So just like that SMB server stood up in the background, if you want to invoke a powersploit command, it'll stand up a web server in the background, completely transparent to the user, and then triggers this little download cradle, downloads the PowerShell snippet from your machine, runs it, gets results and all that. So it's really easy to run it across a bunch of machines. And hash dumping. So different ways to dump hashes are going to work in different situations, depending if you have PowerShell, the architecture of the machine, the AV installation. And some of the existing techniques involve dropping well-known closed source tools to disk. This is sometimes needed, but we like staying off of disk as much as we can. So the way that Pillage does it is it exposes multiple ways. So if you say, I do want to use PowerShell or do want to use this particular type of hash dump or reg backup, you can do that. There's also an auto-grab module which will go to a machine, it'll check if PowerShell's installed. If it is, then it runs a modified version of PowerDump and PowerSploit to do everything in memory. If PowerShell isn't installed and running, it'll run another command to determine the architecture, and then it does that little host execute thing to get the appropriate, hash dumping and Mimikatz binaries. So again, all these things are exposed to users in case you want to hard specify an action, or you can run this and try to get some logic built in. And that's it. I think we're right about 17 minutes or so. But our emails are here. Those are Twitter handles, Harmjoy and Chris Truncer. Our main site, that's our blog, is veil-framework.com. We have a ton of posts. We always put a post up for V-Day, and we put techniques and stuff up. If you want to get the Veil framework, it's on GitHub, Veil-framework, and we have a Veil master project that when you clone it, it'll pull everything down. It'll set everything up, Evasion, Catapult, PowerView, Pillage, and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So
that's about it.
Guys, terrific! Thank you so much. That was a great overview of the tool. So everyone, remember to send questions in. I've got a couple for you that have come through already. The first question is here: any thoughts to get your tool on Kali Linux as standard? I know that you can install via command line, right?
Yeah, so the recommended way that we always tell people to do to install Veil is from our GitHub repo, and we tell them to clone it. It is currently in the Kali repos. However, it is an old, out-of-date version. The reason for that is because, I mean, the offset guys are awesome. They obviously maintain like these giant repos with tons of tools, but the issue you have with that is every time a tool is updated, there's not currently an automated process to actually get the latest up-to-date version in
We
the
have to
repos.
submit a bug report every single time we do a new version. And the problem is with our tools, we update every single month. So, you know, we try to do, you know, every 4 months or so, something like that, try to do a, you know, an update to them. But again, we recommend cloning for the most up-to-date.
Yeah, and then you can use the built-in update function within Veil, and that'll actually also ensure that it's up to date if you clone it from our repo. So that's the best way that we recommend, but it is still currently in their repos as well.
How did you guys even just come up with wanting to build a tool? I mean, did it spawn off a conversation, or how did this? What was the sort of catalyst?
It was, you know, again, like we said, we you know, we'd been on, you know, like a pen test for 4 or 5 days, and then all these techniques and stuff we would be doing manually, and we just realized we would always get by AV, but sometimes we might burn an entire day trying to hand roll a bypass method. So all of a sudden we were just, I guess, kind of thinking, it just arose out of that problem of thinking there has to be an automated way to do this. So it started small, and the code base was actually private for about 4 or 5 months between us, until after a lot of discussion we realized there seems to be a need for this. And ethically we felt, and that's in our SmooCon presentation, we had a whole section on ethics for this, that because all these techniques are out there and already being used by bad guys, we feel that, like, we're happy to release the tool and, you know, bring some attention to these types of stuff, because it's a problem that the bad guys have already solved.
Yeah, I mean, I think we both agree that the white hat community, or the security community in general, should have the same capabilities as the bad guys, especially if you're trying to actually emulate those threat actors out there. So we wanted to make sure that everyone could do that.
And it wasn't that hard. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
So we started, we had no idea what we were doing when we started, and we were like, oh, we'll read some blogs and do AV bypass. And then, you know, in a few months we had half a functioning framework with a bunch of bypass techniques. Like this, we're not geniuses. We don't have, you know, writing backgrounds or anything. Like, we started from scratch, so like anyone could do this if they put the time in.
Cool, very inspirational. Question here is Veil written in Python, and if yes, why did you choose Python?
I think I actually started. So we were kind of writing different tools before we merged the code bases, and that was from this guy on a long couple nights of merging. We did start in Python. It is in Python. For me, the large reason why I started writing it was that was really the only language that I semi-knew at the time. He has a significantly better development background.
Yeah, I just know for, you know, if you want to do, like, we knew Kali Linux, or, you know, Backtrack at the time was going to be our main attack platform. So we're like, okay, we can write this in Bash, you know, Ruby or Python. To us, most security tools are written in Python. Is the thing I'm most comfortable in. You know, I guess that was the main reason. So the main tool I could think of, that main security tool that I can think of that isn't written in Python would be Metasploit.
Yeah.
Beyond that, almost everything else set, you know, all this type of stuff tends to be in Python.
Yeah, it was just, like you said, that it was purely from how comfortable we were with the language versus one language was better for something.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question here, and then I'm going to ask you a couple of questions myself. Do we have any more coming in? Okay. What did you find most surprising about bypassing AVs? What firewall or AV program were the worst in your opinion, and why?
We don't, like, you know, we actually don't focus completely on, you know, testing everything. We are, you know, testing every single, like, kind of, you know, AV, you know, install and everything like that. We don't have a farm yet. But we used to think MSC was good, but I don't think so anymore, because the straight Python kind of thing, it still works a year and a half later on Security Essentials. I think the most surprising thing to me was kind of how easy this was.
Yeah, literally the exact same. I mean, you can take a lot of your super basic techniques that people have written for, like, C payloads, and literally just changing the language to Python, like, it just all of a sudden bypassed it.
Even for that, like, I know the Foofus guys came out with that paper last week that showed, you know, 8 or 9 ways, super easy ways to bypass, like AV, just doing a little bit of method obfuscation, timing obfuscation, and things like that. So again, people have been doing this for a long time. It's just people tended not to talk about it because, it's kind of your secret sauce, or, I guess it didn't really make sense to kind of tell everybody exactly how you're doing AV bypass. But what's heartening to us is that the tool's been out there for a long time, and most of its techniques are still really effective.
Yep.
So.
Okay, let me ask you two questions. Obviously, we have Concise Courses has a keen focus on education, right? Either via Hacker Hotshot events and in some cases, well, continuing education. From what advice would you give somebody watching this who wants to become a penetration tester in regards to how the career path you guys have taken? Any particular certificates or education or experience, sort of courses that you've taken that would be you would recommend for somebody who's looking at you and wants to be in your position in the foreseeable future?
At least for me, I came more from a server admin background, and I think that really helped. In my opinion, there's almost two paths that really help make pen testing an easier job. Is to come from a server admin or an administrative background, whether that be servers, databases, network, etc., or from a development background. And I'm a little bit weaker, I know, on the development side, but that's been something that I've been working to learn. But it's really helped as I've been doing pen tests and we've been breaking into systems when we're actually on servers that I am familiar with them and I understand how they work, how they're configured. And I know certain things to look for that could be security issues, which really help. And so that sort of background, when it came for me, having that sysadmin previous work really helped to actually make me better at what I'm doing right now.
Yep, I came from a CS background. I've been programming since I was 13, so 15 plus years, which helped. It gave me an advantage in some ways, but I'm also weaker in some of the stuff Chris described as his strength. I never did sysadmin, so that's something I've been having to catch up on. For me, breaking into it, I went kind of the more formalized education route, like undergrad, computer science, grad school, and all that type of stuff. Worked at a couple kind of federal research centers and things like that. But what really kind of kicked it off for me was actually taking, and despite the fact we actually help teach training at Black Hat, but we're not going to plug that. What we always do plug to people is the offensive security, it's not pen testing, backtrack anymore.
Pen testing with Kali.
Yeah, the pen testing with Kali, the OSCP stuff, to where for $1,000 you get 2 months of virtual labs, you get really good training. I put a couple hundred hours in that stuff, and that's really where it started to take off for me, and I started to think with that kind of offensive mindset. So then we both went through the cracking the perimeter kind of follow-up and things like that. So super highly recommend the offensive security stuff. If you're starting to get kind of a base, or you're starting to feel more comfortable with a little bit of a security background, definitely take the OSCP. It's pretty much a requirement in our company for testers that if they don't have it when they come on board, they have to do the training and try to get the certification. And for those that aren't aware, you actually the test is a 24-hour test where you have to compromise several machines in a very short period. It's extremely difficult. It's really hard. But if you put the time in, you can do it. That's the last thing. I'll stop ranting. But the biggest thing to me that I think some people underestimate is the amount of time that you're going to have to put into this if you want to be good. Like, we put an enormous amount of our own time for Veil-Evasion and everything else, outside of work hours. So if you have the passion for it and you really want to do this, and you're there on the weekend or after work, doing the open security training, or doing these labs for OSCP, or like researching techniques and reading all these blogs, like, it takes a lot of time, but it doesn't really feel like work to us because that's what we love to do. So
yeah, any sort of we have labs on our work computers at home. Just anything that you can do to benefit yourself and test new techniques. It's a field where you're always going to be learning. And if you're not trying to learn and stay ahead, then you're falling behind.
Sounds good, guys. A lot of solid advice there and a lot of great content. So thank you both very, very much for coming on Hacker Hotshots. Hopefully we will get you back on again soon for an update. And guys, keep up the good work and keep being passionate.
Thank you.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one, okay? Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye-bye.